respected teacher, dear community. Today is the 11th of August in the year 2025. We are in the Assembly of Stars meditation hall in the Lower Hamlet of Plum Village in France. And today is the second day of our annual wake-up retreat. And in this retreat, you get a free sweat lodge. Some people pay for this. Here we don't charge extra for that. Raise your hand if you know what mindfulness is. Could it be a trick question? It's a trick question. Okay, you did very well. Most people didn't raise their hand. This is good. This is good. I didn't raise my hand. I prefer not to know. Because if I know, I stop being curious. If I think I know, then maybe I make mindfulness something small, something limited. There's a lot of definitions out there, right, of mindfulness these days. It was easier 25 years ago, or something like that, 26 years ago when I first came to Plum Village. I don't think anyone really knew what mindfulness was, so we were very open-minded in principle. Maybe open-mindedness lasted about 10 minutes, but if you don't know, it gives you a chance to discover something new. So if we do know, or if we think we know, let's see if we can unknow to discover something fresh. Because mindfulness for me is not something limited. There's always something new we can discover about it. So I want to start by giving you a sense of the space of mindfulness, how big it can be. So I think it has at least two dimensions. So one we could call the intensity dimension. It can be strong or weak, right? It can be very focused or more or less dispersed. You can have some mindfulness or no mindfulness, or a little bit of mindfulness, more mindfulness. My experience of being around our teacher, Tai, is that it doesn't seem to be limited. It's not like it's a scale of 1 to 10. You can have like maximum 10 mindfulness. No, I think it's infinite. It just goes on and on. It goes deeper and deeper. So it can be more or less strong. But it can also be, I think there's another dimension which we could call maybe breadth. How much does your mindfulness encompass? So you could be, and this is not good or bad, right? It's just different kinds of attention you can bring to bear in your practice. So you could pay attention to just one thing, if you can find one thing. But say, you could pay attention to your breath, as if that's one thing. Or you could pay attention just to the sensation of the breath at the nostrils. That seems to be one thing, but when you look more carefully, it's also not one thing. But it can be apparently narrow. You can sort of focus your mindfulness on one thing and pay attention to just that. You could pay attention, and the amazing thing is you can choose, right? That's wild, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but you can choose what to pay attention to. It's crazy. Like you can pay attention to your connection with Mother Earth. as a sensation, as a physical sensation right now. Your feeling of contact with the earth. You can choose if you want. But then the mindfulness can also be very, very large, very wide. So you could pay attention to that sensation of contact with the earth. Feel your weight on the earth. Feel the earth's weight pushing back. And then you can keep that awareness alive and add in the awareness of your breath. So it's awareness of contact and the movement of the breath, the sensations of the breath. And then you can actually feel your whole body, all the cells, the breath, the body, contact. But you can keep going. Then you can be aware of the people around you. You're still aware of yourself. You're aware of the people on the left, on the right, in front, behind. You can expand further. You can be aware of the whole. And you can go beyond the whole. You can be aware of the people on the verandas. You can be aware of the trees, the grass, the bushes, the birds and the insects, the horizon, the sky, the sun. You can be aware of this little, as if you're floating up above the earth, you feel this part of France, Plum Village, located in the southwest of France, a little bit inland from Bordeaux. Somewhere over there, the Atlantic Ocean. Down there is the Pyrenees. Up there is Paris. There's the rest of Europe. You could zoom out even further, whole of Europe, planet Earth, the moon, the solar system. You can keep going. That's mindfulness, right? Still mindfulness. You're aware of what is going on in the present moment. All of that is going on in the present moment. But it's up to you how tightly you want to focus the beam of your mindfulness. It doesn't have to be just one thing. It can be wide. That breadth could include also different kind of aspects of reality. It could just be physical sensations. It could be emotions. Awareness of suffering. Who's suffering? Only yours? No, it doesn't have to be. It can be the suffering of your family, of your ancestors, of your people. It can be the suffering of the earth. It can be the suffering of the more than human world, not just the human dimension. So this breadth can be very, very big. So then you have a huge space. There's mindfulness which is wide but shallow, right? Not very strong but very wide. Or you could have mindfulness which is very narrow and not very strong, or it could be attention on one thing but very intense, like a laser beam, or it could be very strong and very wide. All possible. Okay, we could add another dimension. Okay, if you can visualize a third dimension here, which I'm going to call maybe like the quality. I'm just making this up, so don't take it too seriously. But I think this is important, actually, because there's a sense in which when we start taking mindfulness out of the context of a spiritual tradition, which is what has been done, right? That's what capitalism does best, that it extracts things and then markets them, repackages them, markets them, sells them back to us. And so now we have kind of clinical mindfulness, non-spiritual mindfulness, secular mindfulness, which is fine, could be good, but we have to be a little bit careful because it might we might miss some things as we try to take it out of its original context. And it's not like mindfulness doesn't belong to Buddhism, right? Mindfulness is we're somehow trying to triangulate to discover a quality that we all already have. It's innate in us, and maybe not just humans, maybe all beings have this possibility of being aware and awake to what is going on in the present moment, inside and around. But I think when I learned mindfulness from my teacher, he always spoke about it with this quality of tenderness. Right? It was never this like cold white light of awareness shining neutrally on things. It was never that. It was always like this loving, gentle energy, so you can be aware of the object of your awareness, but with a lot of love, with a lot of gentleness, a lot of tenderness. So I would recommend. It's, there's less risk of harm. If our mindfulness is a little too cold, a little bit too antiseptic, too kind of neutral, I'm not sure how helpful it is. So this is kind of like more or less tenderness, let's say, the quality of mindfulness, how loving it is, how gentle it is, how tender it is. I'm just picking words, but I think you get the point, right? You can actually kind of feel, you can sense the quality of your own attention. And so now we've got a very big space of possibilities of what kind of attention we want to bring. We could have a fourth dimension. It's harder to represent visually, but if you want to go beyond 3D, we can. Or maybe we could have lots of dimensions. But the fourth one maybe is like the, maybe call it continuity or duration. So it's like you could have very strong mindfulness for a moment, and then your mind wanders away. Or you could have mindfulness which is starting to be sustained. You maintain your awareness of the object of contemplation, whether that is a feeling or another person, whether that is suffering, your suffering, the suffering of the world. You maintain that awareness without the interruption of narrative, discursive thought. A little bit challenging, but possible. That's what we're training. So it's the concentration dimension. How concentrated is your mindfulness? And when you sustain it, it just becomes concentration. It already has the energy of concentration within it, and it can get stronger and stronger until it's very, very stable. You can sustain it as long as you need. And things reveal themselves. Okay, so many dimensions, big space. One other thing we can contemplate is we can ask ourselves, is mindfulness mine? Is it my energy of mindfulness? In a modern neuroscientific context, that is a little bit the tendency, right? To sort of try to find bits of the brain that light up when people are practicing mindfulness, and they say, okay, so it is a brain function. Bit of brain lights up, dorsolateral, prefrontal cortex, whatever, some little bit of the right frontal lobe, usually, some other bits too. And then we latch onto that and we say, okay, so it is a function of the brain. But for me, there's a problem with that. If I believe that mindfulness is a function of my brain, then first of all, it means I'm kind of stuck in my own head with it. It's just mine. I'm separate. And it's also limited, right? Because the brain can only do so much. But in my experience of mindfulness, and especially being around my teacher, is that it doesn't seem to be limited. And it also doesn't seem to stay exactly kind of like in the head. In the sense, I always felt like he's kind of like a mindfulness furnace, just like blazing mindfulness energy, and you'd be around him, and I would get this clear vision of myself and all the layers of my mind and all these shadowy parts of myself that I wasn't aware of, and suddenly it would all be lit up in this awareness, and I'd be like, I'm pretty good at this. Looking deeply, wow, I see myself so clearly, and then I would wander off, and I'd be like, maybe that wasn't me. Not my mindfulness. He just lent it to me. He was very generous like that. So luckily, it doesn't have to be limited to us. We can share. We can benefit from the collective energy of mindfulness. And that's why we gather like this, even though it's a little bit hot. It's worth it. And maybe we don't have to leave it just in the human realm as well. Tai would sometimes say, the energy of mindfulness is like the energy of the Holy Spirit. I would hear that and be like, I don't know what that is. I'm not a Christian. I didn't come here for Christian stuff. I'm in full rebellion. Don't give me Christian stuff. And yet somehow, it would be like something would get past all of my mental defenses and touch my heart. And it's like, I don't know what that means, the energy of the Holy Spirit. I don't know what the Holy Spirit is. But there's some things I do know, like maybe that it's not small. Right? If there is such a thing, this Holy Spirit. One thing is it cannot be small. It's got to be vast, beyond imagining. It's also not mine. It's not me, it's not mine. It's something beyond individualism, beyond self, beyond identity. So when I followed my breath, that energy of mindfulness that I feel, that awareness of the movement of the breath, can I allow that? Can I allow myself to experience that awareness as this vast, unknowable, infinitely loving energy? You see? It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different from standing within the context of neuroscience and MBSR and MBCT, longitudinal studies, and kind of going, I am generating my mindfulness, my brain function, my dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is lighting up. I'm aware of this, I'm aware of that. It's very narrow. Whereas if I stand over here and I can kind of go, well, there's something happening which is profoundly mysterious. I can feel it. I can't explain it. I am aware of my breathing. I can feel that. But it doesn't have to be my awareness. That awareness can be awareness itself. And this is helpful when we turn towards suffering. Because if I try to face suffering with just my little dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, my little energy of mindfulness, maybe it's too difficult. I don't have enough mindfulness to embrace that immensity of suffering. My suffering, which is of course my ancestors' suffering, my culture's suffering, humanity's suffering, the world's suffering. How can I embrace that? I would need something vast to embrace something equally vast. So let's not trap ourselves in notions, definitions, and worldviews. right? Ideas of what we think is going on. Let's keep a little space for the mystery. It will help. So we apply this energy of mindfulness typically to 4 domains. We can call it the 4 foundations. This is what we're training. These are also not small. So the first foundation of mindfulness is the body. We can be aware of sensations in our body. We can be aware of tension, be aware of relaxation, be aware of pleasant sensations, neutral sensations, unpleasant sensations, mixed sensations. And it's vast, and you can do a body scan, you can you discover a whole world just in the body. The second is the feelings. And I like to think of this more as being like, maybe it's helpful to say feelings as kind of feeling tone. Or maybe, well, let's start with feeling tone. So what do I mean by that? I mean kind of like your affect, whether you are feeling good, neutral, or not so good. So it can be a feeling of being drawn towards something, being neutral in relation to it, or wanting to move away from whatever it is that we're aware of. And so it's kind of attraction, repulsion, or being neutral. It's your kind of emotional stance in relation to what's happening in that moment. You say it's how you're feeling. But I distinguish it a little bit from like feeling sad or happy or, you see what I mean? It's not exactly that. That's in the next one. Mental formations. But also don't take these too seriously. There are no boundaries between these categories. It's just a kind of helpful roadmap for you to navigate the territory of your present moment experience. It's not meant to be a kind of absolute description of this is the nature of reality. It's just a helpful map that you can make use of. So in our tradition, we list at least 51 mental formations, and you may like to memorize them. It's helpful. You can ask your facilitators to give you a list if you want, if you like that kind of thing. And the name of the game is to recognize which mental formation is present. So what do we mean? A formation is something which is dependent on conditions to arise. So it's a kind of technical term that we make use of. And in a sense, everything can be understood as a formation. Right? There's physical formations like this whiteboard. It needed all kinds of conditions to come together. Then there's physiological formations, like a hand. This is a physiological formation. That needed many conditions: mother, father, food, oxygen, water, to name a few. And then there's mental formations, which we could list some, like love. Love needs conditions to come together. Hate is also a mental formation. Compassion. We touched a little bit the seed of compassion this morning with the chanting. Tolerance. Fear. Hope. Anxiety. Anger. Regret. Joy. These are all kind of potentials of our mind and body. And we all have the potential to be in those states. We may not be right now, but it's not to say that they're not there as a potential. And given the right conditions, maybe environmental conditions and internal conditions, the formation arises. Okay? And then we have the fourth domain, which we can call, well, let's call it, objects of mind. So this is our perceptions. We're always perceiving things, right? We perceive ourselves, we perceive each other, we perceive sensations, we perceive the body, we perceive the whole, the blue sky. And in Buddhist psychology, everything, all phenomena are understood to be objects of mind. So a mountain is your awareness of the mountain, is your perception of the mountain. Let's just enjoy the sound of the bell. We can be aware of the sound of the bell as an object of mind. So there's an important difference here between this approach, this kind of methodology, this way of looking, and the kind of modern scientific, neuroscientific, psychiatric, or even psychological way of understanding the mind. So we have a tendency to think of the mind as something which exists already, and we think of a world which also exists, waiting for the mind to be aware of it. There is a world. Normally we think like that. But in Buddhist psychology, it's a little bit different. So we think of mind not exactly as a pre-existing entity, but more like it's a river. And it's a river which is made up of droplets, which we understand as the mental formations. So the mental formations are mind, right? They are the kind of the river of mind. And all these mental formations need to have object of mind. So if you love someone, or you love something, right? So love is kind of like the mental formation as the subject of cognition, right? I love, but I love something, or I love someone. Same with hate. So hate has a subjective quality, but also has an object. There is an object of your hate. You hate somebody, you hate something. Anger is the same. There's no anger without taking an object. We're angry with something, angry with someone, with a situation, with ourselves. So we can the the key here is to realize that there is no subject without an object. It's a little bit strange, because usually we think of ourselves as pre-existing the things that we're aware of, the objects of our awareness. We exist, and then we perceive things. But in fact, we and the world come to be at the same time, in the moment of cognition. Subject and object co-arise. So this is how we think of mind in the tradition of Buddhist psychology. We never think of it as only the subjective side. It always comes in two halves. So subject of cognition and object of cognition. So in a sense, you can understand this, the third foundation, is kind of, it looks a little bit like the subjective part of mind, right? It's the love, the hate, compassion, anger, forgiveness, tolerance. But all of those mental formations have an object. I forgive someone, I forgive myself. I'm tolerant towards this or that notion or person or event. So these actually co-arise. And as we apply the energy of mindfulness to these different domains, what we start to realize is that, in a sense, so we have the objects of mind that we normally think of, like that which we are aware of, the world, phenomena. But our body is also the object of our mind. Right? When I'm mindful, mindfulness is always mindfulness of something. I can be mindful of my body, mindful of the sensations in my body. I can be mindful of my feeling tone, whether I'm feeling good, neutral, not so good. Feelings are also object of mind. And the mental formations too. This is where it gets a bit tricky, because they're both now subject and object. So your mind can be the object of your mind. Right? I can be aware of the energy of anger within me. I can be aware of my hate. I can be aware of my love. I can be aware of my joy. I can even be mindful of my mindfulness, right? Which is what we were doing a little bit earlier. Okay. So this is a little bit what we are up to here. And we need a little bit of technology to help us as we explore these vast domains of awareness, with this vast awareness and all its qualities. And the first technology that we learn is to bring our attention to our breath. Mindfulness of breathing is the basic technology that we rely on. It's the vehicle on which we ride to explore these different domains. And it's, for me, mindfulness of the breath which leads to mindfulness of the body, the feelings, mental formations, objects of mind, is a little bit like listening. So it's listening as a metaphor here. So we listen to the present moment. Listen to the feeling of the breath. And our listening can be more or less deep. We know that we are aware of so much suffering in the world, and I think many of us are animated by the question of what to do. What should we do, knowing what we know? What should we do in the face of so much suffering? And our methodology is to be peace. We want to do peace, but the foundation of doing peace is to be peace. We know that there is war, there is violence in the world, but I also find war and violence in my own heart. And I know I don't want to make the situation worse. I don't want to add to the hate, to the intolerance, to the discrimination. So I want to try to do my best to end the war in my own heart first. We want to love. We want to love and we want to be loved. The foundation of being able to love another person is to be able to love and accept ourselves, which may be hard. For me it's hard. I don't know about for you. I don't always find myself lovable. Because to love myself, to accept myself, is also to love and to accept my mother, my father, my ancestors, my lineage. In fact, my lineages. It also means to accept my society. That's hard. And the technology that we have for this process to unfold is it's exactly what we did this morning, to listen to the suffering. We listen to the suffering within ourselves, and we listen to the suffering in the world. And they're not really two different things. They're very much the same thing. So on this retreat, one of the things you may like to train is this practice of deep listening. We gather together in our circle, sharing families. We listen deeply to each other. And we do our best to notice when we are judging or reacting or when we're just distracted. And you can do it now. You can be aware of the quality of your own listening. Just notice, without judging yourself, but just notice how much of you is occupied in internal commentary right? In trains of thought that have been touched off by something that was said, but which then take you away from what is being said. How much of your mind is wandering, or just sleepy, or daydreaming, or wondering what's for lunch? That is the practice of deep listening, to observe our mind listening, and just to notice how much of ourself is elsewhere. Because the moment we notice that is the opportunity to come back. So right now you might like to try just listening to the sound of my voice. And sometimes we have a tendency to think when we listen deeply, we need to think a lot about what is being said. Right? We need to check. Is it true? Should I let this in or not? Am I being brainwashed? Do I disagree? What about, I keep my independence? That all has its value. I'm not questioning the value of doubt or skepticism. I like a little bit of skepticism. But it comes a little bit at a cost as well. And there are certain contexts in which we can maybe let go or put down the shield of skepticism and let life in. So you may like to experiment with, when you're listening in your family circles, just listening not so much to what is being said, not the information content, but listen to the music of speech. Listen to the rising and the falling of that person's voice, the cadence. Listen to the quality, the timbre. What's the energy of that voice? Allow yourself to listen like you listen to music, without judging or reacting. This kind of listening, we might think of it initially as being kind of passive. We want to change the world. We want to help resolve the suffering, the difficulty, and that means to take action. Usually, we think of what kind of action could we take, but maybe listening itself is a kind of action. And you may get the experience this week that listening like that is very healing. When you have a chance to share and you feel really heard, completely heard by a group of people, is very healing. And those people don't need to fix you or give you any advice or tell you what to do. So it seems like nothing's been resolved, but you feel better. I had this experience before I was a monk. I used to come to Plum Village a couple of times a year, and I would go home. And I was living in London, and my partner at the time was working at the BBC, and I think it was at the time of the Iraq War, and in 2002 or 3, or the build-up towards the war, and the newsroom she was in was a sometimes very hostile, very toxic environment. And sometimes she would come home from work with that, it's just, she had a difficult day, tough day. I remember one day she came home, and I think what had happened was, if I remember rightly, I might need to check with her, but if I remember rightly, something had happened which unfortunately I think happens quite a lot still, which is that a man on her team had taken credit for the work that she had done. So I don't know if anybody's ever had that experience. Unfortunately, I think it's fairly common experience. So he had done basically nothing, but then in the group meeting had managed to stand up and take credit for all of the work that she'd done. So she came home and was understandably a little bit upset. And so I thought, okay, I know what to do. I'm gonna listen, and listen deeply. So I sat down beside her. I said, okay, just tell me what happened. Tell me how you're feeling. And so she started sharing this situation, everything that had happened. And immediately there was a reaction in me of the kind of, I wanted to be her knight in shining armor. So, okay, I'm going to save you. I'm going to rescue you from this terrible situation. And I started feeling, she probably a little bit aggressive. I thought, like, okay, I'm gonna go. What if I go with you tomorrow? I'm gonna talk to this guy. I'm gonna tell him how it is. So I felt that reaction coming up, but I was like, maybe I can do better. I was practicing listening. She's still speaking, still sharing her feeling, her emotion, what had happened. So I thought, okay, that's my first reaction. Maybe it's not the best. I let it go. Let it go. Just come back to being aware of her in this moment, of her sharing, the energy of her sharing. Not so much to what I'm going to do. That was the first reaction. And another reaction came up quite quickly, which was kind of like the negotiator. Okay, I'm going to help you navigate this situation, give you some tips. Kind of negotiator, coach. And then, but I saw that coming up, and I was like, no, I don't trust that. Let it go. Come back to just listening. And then, and then maybe the psychologist came up, kind of like, okay, I understand the psychology of what happened here. I think I can fix this. I can explain it back to you in a way that's going to help. No. Useless. Let it go. I don't know how many times, 10, 12, 15 times, an idea of what to do, what to say, how to help would come up, but I didn't, but because I'd had the experience of listening deeply as the healing itself, I wasn't hooked by any of those ideas. So I let them go, and I let them go, I let them go. My mind got more and more quiet. And I was able, I think, to really be there for her in a deeper and deeper way, in a more and more authentic way. Until, in the end, I had nothing to say. I was just listening. And maybe I just put my hand on her shoulder. And somehow, we didn't need to fix it. There was relief just from being heard, from being authentically heard and not given advice. Maybe she'd had enough advice from me already. She's probably a bit sick of that. So this is something that we can do. This is something that we can learn. It's an art that we can train ourselves in. And it's not limited to our personal relationships. We can bring this, we can listen deeply, of course, to our partner, to our friends. Also try to listen deeply to our parents. It can be a little bit more challenging. They really know how to press all the right buttons to elicit the quick reactions. But if you have enough energy of mindfulness, you can notice yourself reacting and go, no, thank you. Not today. I'm going to listen deeply. And we listen in order to understand. We listen in order to feel, to understand through feeling, Not understand like intellectually, to understand deeply the suffering of the other person and of ourselves. That quality of deep listening can be applied to ourselves as well. We listen to our body, to the patterns of tension, of bracing in our body. Our body has recorded our whole life. All of our traumas and pains and difficult situations are recorded in the patterns of tension and holding. We can listen to that. And it's very healing. And we can bring that listening into our workplace, to our colleagues. They don't need to know. They don't need to know we're doing anything, weird. This is stealth mindfulness. You just don't do kind of intense spiritual starry eyes like I'm listening deeply to you now. That's just aggressive. It doesn't help. You can just be normal. You can be normal, but you can be really there. And it might have more of a transformative effect than you think. My teacher had a lot of experience at peace talks, conferences, negotiations to bring an end to the war in Vietnam and so on. And I think he, in the end, he lost a little bit his faith in those methodologies, as a solution to the violence, to the hate, to the discrimination and fear. So we have to ask ourselves, what was his solution in the end? And he made a proposal for how peace talks could be run. I don't think we've done it yet. So it's maybe somebody in this room who will do it. I think what he said is that we've tried talking. We've tried that for a long time. It hasn't really worked. So we come to the peace conferences with our negotiating points. Also the climate talks, it's a little bit the same. We come with our talking points. We come with our negotiating positions, what we're willing to surrender and what we're not, our red lines. But maybe we don't listen deeply. We don't listen in order to understand. So he said, well, before the peace conference, you should have at least 2 days of retreat, where the delegates come together, they breathe, and they learn the art of walking meditation, of breathing in mindfulness, of total relaxation. And then maybe the first thing that you do, instead of negotiating, is just to listen deeply. And everybody has a chance to share their suffering. And the other side has to just listen, first of all. No excuses. Just listening. And even if the listening provokes some anger in us, and we think what is being said isn't true, we remember that we're there to listen deeply to the pain that's behind what is being said. It doesn't matter exactly if it's true or not true. We're just listening to understand the suffering, first of all. We may have a chance to correct wrong perceptions later. But first of all, just listen. And I think, actually, I said, I don't know if anybody has applied this, but maybe somebody has. I think Christiana Figueres, in the negotiations building up to the Paris Climate Agreement, she applied this practice. And probably she didn't tell anybody that she was doing it. She was also doing stealth mindfulness. But she shared with us these stories of going into these situations, very locked negotiations, and she would just listen. Listen to hear the suffering. Listen to really understand. And when the people, the parties, the countries that she was listening to felt understood, then the situation would open up, would unlock. So this is something for us to develop together as a community. I want to read to you a text from our chanting book. I won't read the whole thing. But this is a text called Loving Speech and Deep Listening. For so many past lifetimes, we have made mistakes which have brought about much suffering. All of us hold on to our internal judgments. Sometimes we cannot look at each other anymore. We lose our capacity to listen deeply and to speak with loving and harmonious words. The communication between us is overloaded with difficulties and obstacles. There seems to be no way to resolve our suffering. Every day, understanding and love fade. You might have experienced this in your relationships. The heavy, obstructed atmosphere stifles all our happiness. But we are determined to practice listening deeply, to speak with love. And this is the practical part. I shall practice diligently to guard my body and mind with conscious breathing through awareness of my steps, so that I can recognize and embrace the anger and irritation in my heart. Right? Because it's one thing to have the intention to listen deeply. But if our anger and irritation comes up too fast, we may find ourselves interrupting, reacting. So this is why we do this practice, one of the reasons. We know we need to cultivate this energy of mindfulness very powerfully, so that in the difficult situations, when our suffering is triggered, we don't have to react. We have more freedom. We can keep our sovereignty. With conscious breathing and through awareness of my steps, I will practice so that I can recognize and embrace the anger and irritation in my heart, so I can sit and listen deeply with all my compassion, and so the other person has a chance to share all their hidden suffering. I want to learn to listen deeply with sincere, loving kindness, so that the other person can suffer less. I promise that even if the other person says things that are not true, even if his or her words are full of blame, I shall continue to listen attentively. I shall wait for the right time to find a way to let the other person know what really happened, so the other person has a chance to correct his or her perceptions. I want to practice using harmonious and loving words to help the person sitting with me to hear and understand what I need to say. But for as long as I still have irritation in my heart, I will practice mindful breathing and mindful walking, determined to avoid any discussion. I am determined only to speak when I am able to master my mind. It's quite a challenge. But how many of us have said things that we regret? When we speak in anger, We speak too quickly. We react too fast. In my experience, it usually doesn't go so well. So it doesn't mean stifling our anger, right? It doesn't mean we're not allowed to be angry. No, we are. But we don't want to speak from that anger. This is our profound commitment to non-violence. Non-violence even in our speech. So we want to listen to our anger, to take it for a walk, to listen to it with tenderness, with love. Right? Remember the quality dimension? Mindfulness of anger is a very powerful technology. There needs to be the right kind of mindfulness. Loving, spacious, vast. And then our anger has a chance to be heard. It may have been waiting to be heard for a long time. I want to share a little bit our theory of change. Because something that can happen in these retreats is, we talk about mindfulness, we talk about walking meditation, following the breath. It all sounds nice. And then there's a point where somebody goes, yeah, but what about systems change? How is this going to help? There was a question and answer session, I think in 2013 in Magnolia Grove Monastery in the US, where somebody asked our teacher, should we practice civil disobedience as a Sangha? Should we be human shields in situations of violence? Should we put ourselves in the way of the killing, physically, to help it to stop? And he didn't exactly say no, but he said, I think there's a better way. This is very interesting. So he said the better way is to give people an example. To show people an example of how it's possible to live as a happy person. Then he went further, he said, show them a happy community. Show them that it's possible to live simply. To have a community which practices loving speech and deep listening. Which embodies harmony. A community where everything that is said with love. Where every step is taken in mindfulness. And he said, I think this is a drastic way of peacemaking. So it's very interesting because sometimes maybe we have the tendency to think of a retreat, a mindfulness retreat, as something which is a little bit outside of our lives. And then what we hear quite often in the monastery is like, yeah, but what about the real world? Because this isn't the real world. And then we have to go back to the real world where people are angry and upset, and there's violence and discrimination and intolerance. How do we continue? And that might be a little bit in the kind of the notion of retreat in the kind of Western capitalist setting is a little bit like that. It's like, I'm going to live my life in a way which is pretty much intolerable, and then every so often I'm going to go on retreat, to feel a little bit better, and then I go back to my intolerable, unsustainable way of life. Have you ever seen anybody do that? I think that happens. And so that's why we like extreme retreats as well, with quick effects. You know, we want to practice 12 hours sitting meditation a day. Do it hard. You know, it's something very remote as well from our lives, something very different. We go to the jungle. Huh? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But then we go straight back and we don't change anything. We go straight back to our toxic workplace, to our job which is not aligned with our values, to our way of life, to our environment, to our consumption of media, our consumption of television, of movies. And we get sick again, and we go on retreat again. Or we go and do a fasting retreat in Thailand. You know, have warm oil dripped on your forehead for a while. Do extreme yoga for a little bit. And then come back to the toxic lifestyle again. Great. So our approach is a little bit different. Right? We want our retreats to be as close to your daily life as possible. So we do all the same things. Right? Even cleaning the dishes, scrubbing the toilets, talking to each other, like actually interacting with other human beings. There's some retreats where you're not allowed to make eye contact. And so I don't know, I'm not here to criticize that, but I'm just saying this is a different methodology. We are training ourselves in interaction. There were some people on a retreat last year who asked us to ban the use of the word Palestine because it was triggering them. And there were some people who were wearing the keffiyeh, and they asked us to ban it. They said, please can you forbid people from wearing the keffiyeh, because when we see it, it triggers us. Our trauma is triggered. So we said no. And they weren't happy with that. Because they thought, I want to come to Plum Village and I have a right in Plum Village not to be triggered. Well, I'm very sorry. But you don't. Plum Village is not meant to be a place which is not going to trigger you. Very sorry about that. No, I really am, because the last thing we want is to be triggered, for our trauma to be touched, to be awoken. But actually, we need it to be triggered. We need it to come up in a place which is safe, in a place where we have a chance to encounter it in a different way, where we're not too preoccupied and busy to listen to it. Where we have time and space to listen to it, to embrace it with love and tenderness, to allow it to be embraced with love and tenderness of the whole community. So, Plum Village is very much the real world. We face all the same challenges. But we have made some choices about how we want to live. We're committed to certain things. And it's not perfect, right? It's a work in progress. But we're committed to living in an awakened way, to trying to do everything throughout every day with the energy of tender, loving mindfulness and awareness. Because we believe that that is the way to change the world. to have communities of non-violent resistance. What do we resist? We resist our own impulse towards anger, towards discrimination, towards intolerance, towards making enemies. The situation in the world is so sharply divided. There are so many lines of division. And sometimes we cut others off from our compassion. We make them the enemy. Even in our efforts towards peace, we make enemies, and the war continues in our own hearts. Here in Plum Village, we try to live in such a way that we can meet that hatred in ourselves, that intolerance, that fear. The part of us that says, I will never talk to them again. We lock each other in psychological jail, right? In the name of healthy boundaries. So that person is toxic. I cannot listen to them anymore. They trigger me too much. Well, maybe for a time. We do need to protect ourselves sometimes. We need to create space. We need to be safe enough. Okay. But let's not lock each other behind walls of concrete. We have to leave a door. And when we're ready, when we're strong enough, we have to open the door. So if we lock each other all up in the jail of our healthy boundaries, we'll end up alone, cut off. We have a chance during this retreat to reconcile. And we say the miracle of reconciliation always happens. We see it every single week. And there's relationships we've written off. Sometimes it's our own mother or father or grandparent, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, friend, lover. So that's it, I cut off communication. It's too painful. But that person is in you. They're not only outside of you. We can never cut ourselves off from the ones that we have loved. They shape us, they form us, they're part of us. So at least, even if you can't talk to them, at least see if you can make peace with them in you. Your mother, your father are in you. And when you listen deeply to your body, you're also listening deeply to them. And you listen deeply to your feelings, to your mental formations, to your perceptions. You're listening deeply to them. And they may really need it. They may need your listening. Maybe nobody has ever listened to them like you can now. And you never know when you can reconcile with that person in you. The situation outside might look different afterwards. And things that you thought are not possible become possible. Things you thought you could never say, you can say. So don't lock the door. Leave it open. We have created a community here as an act of peacemaking in the world. And we shouldn't underestimate the impact of that in the world. It's a little bit hard to identify exactly what has this changed. What are we changing? And it's hard because it doesn't seem to stop the wars and the killing, the genocide that's happening right now. It doesn't seem to be a direct response to that. But if we become powerful, if this movement grows, if it spreads, maybe we can stop a genocide, a war in 10 years, in 50 years, in 100 years. Maybe the seeds of peace that we're sowing now in our own hearts will profoundly change the world. And we might not even live to see the result, but we believe in the action. We don't wait for the result. Because the means cannot be sacrificed for the ends. Now, if the end we want is peace, then the means to achieve peace have to be peace. And that has its own value now. It's already huge, immeasurably vast as an action. We want to create a community where people can come and get to experience this way of life for a while, so that you can trust it, so you can be inspired. Because once you know that healing is possible, that peace is possible, then you can do it. You do it at home, in your workplace, in your communities, and it spreads. And the best thing that an individual can do is to be a little bit less of an individual. So we also come here to practice not exactly as individuals. We come to practice as a community. Because we want to dissolve these artificial, imaginary boundaries of our separateness. When I first came to Plum Village, there were not so many young people. It was a little bit odd sometimes coming on retreat here. And especially actually going home back to England, I looked for a Sangha right away, for a community of practice. And I found one where I was studying in Cambridge, and I cycled out. It was quite far from the centre of town. I cycled out there. And I knocked on the door. I went in, and there were all these people sitting in a circle, mostly in their 60s. And they all looked at me like I was an alien. You know, I must have been 20, and maybe a little bit like with some crazy hair and, you know, just crazy generally. And they were a bit like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Is this like Plum Village Sangha thing?" And they were like, "Yeah," but as if like, "Yeah, but..." Really? You? Anyway, I kind of stuck it out for a little bit. But I felt a little bit like an alien. And then even in Plum Village, sometimes I would come on retreat, and there were not so many people my age. I was in my early 20s. And so when I ordained in 2008 as a monk, one of the first things that our teacher asked us to do was to create a movement for young people. And so he proposed a name. I don't know how many of you know this, but he proposed a name which was Young Buddhists for a Healthy and Compassionate Society. And we were like, "No, Tai, no, 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 no. That's great. Love the idea. Just let's work on the title a little bit, you know." And Tai was like, "Oh, okay, you know." So we workshopped it a little bit, and we came up with Wake Up. There was a mission statement, and then Tai announced it in the summer retreat in 2008. And he said there was a website when there was no website. So that night, we had to make a website. That was how Thai did things. He just declared that they existed, and then we had to make sure that they did exist. But if you think that, that this might not be enough, right, or that it might not work, back then, it's true, it felt like, how can this be enough? We would have a retreat for young adults, there'd be maybe 30 people. The first retreat in Lower Hamlet, 30 people. It was great. And then it grew a little bit, but there were no sanghas, and then we had to go on wake-up tours. But now, here we are, 820 people. In those first few years, we had to fight for it every year to put it in the schedule, the yearly calendar of retreats. And we were novices. We didn't have any right to, declare that there was a wake-up retreat. We had to go to the Dharma teacher and say, please, can we have a retreat for young adults? I say, why? We did one last year. Why do we need to do one again? But now it's a fixture. Every year. And in fact, the demographics of all the other retreats have changed as well. So you're all here, but you're also in all the other retreats. It's really shifted. And there are wake-up sanghas, practicing communities, many parts of the world. Maybe I do a little call out here. I'll probably forget a few. Who here is from Wake Up London? Yeah, okay. Wake Up Paris? All right. Bordeaux? Lyon? Yeah. Barcelona? Yeah. Madrid? No. Where else? Amsterdam? Yay. Rotterdam? Any other? Okay, Wake Up Netherlands. Let's just keep it simple. Wake Up Germany. All right, Italy. Yay. Where else? Belgium. Yay. I said London, but UK. Okay, Ireland. Yay. Okay, Norway. Yay. Sweden. Maybe. Denmark. Yay. That's just Europe. I mean, we could keep going for a while. US. Yay. Canada. Yay. South America, sorry. South America, I know there's many countries. Yes, at least one. And maybe Bangkok or Thailand. There's a very strong Wake Up Bangkok. Vietnam? No. Other Asian countries? Sorry. Okay, amazing. So here we are. So our community is the Dharma Talk. The community is the teaching. The community is the resistance movement. It's the protest. What are we resisting? What are we protesting against? We're resisting unfettered consumption. Right? We know it's possible to live happily, but more simply, consuming less. We're resisting a culture of fear, discrimination, intolerance. And we stand for trust in the human family. This is an experience usually when we come on retreat, the first day you look around the circle and you're like, I don't know who these people are. Am I in the right place? What is this kind of group therapy thing? I don't know if it's for me. And maybe this is day 2, so you might be in the dip. But that's part of the methodology, okay? You've got to touch the suffering. It's normal. But I promise you, day 3, day 4, day 5, the joy starts to rise. And you start to look around you and trust again. Trust in the compassion, the wisdom, the tolerance of the human family. And that's an amazing thing to bring with you out into the world. We have, we're resisting hyper-individualism as well. We're reconnecting. We're reconnecting body and mind. We're reconnecting community. We're reconnecting to the natural world. All of these things are part of our resistance movement. And we're also reconnecting to the spiritual dimension. We don't want to rely only on material solutions to the conflicts in the world. We want to have access to the spiritual dimension. And the only way to do that is to give up our separation. Because if we remain isolated as separate selves, there is no spiritual dimension. We have to let go a little bit of our boundaries. And this is not a matter of dogma, okay? I don't ask you to take my word for it. It's something that you can experience, that you can taste for yourself. To restore the dimension of wonder, of mystery at the heart of the present moment. And love beyond just a love to satisfy our needs, or a love as a biological imperative, but something more vast. Something that has no limit. Love without limit. This is what we can experience together. And it's a love that comes from understanding the roots of suffering. We are cultivating the quality of fearlessness as well, together. Alone it's hard, but together it's possible to really look, to really allow ourselves to feel the planetary grief of this moment. Alone it's too much. Together we can do it. We can let it come up, we can hold it, we don't have to ignore it, we don't have to cover it up with consumption anymore. We can allow it to be there, to be heard. And from hearing that suffering, that planetary suffering, insight will arise. This is our methodology, this is the way. Not to turn away from the suffering, to turn towards it. Using the collective energy to make us strong. And these are all the things I've been speaking about in a way can be understood as the qualities of the bodhisattvas. We are bodhisattvas in training. This morning we already invoked the bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, who can listen deeply to the suffering of the world, who can listen in order to understand, and from that understanding compassion is born. And we have the bodhisattva Manjushri, whose superpower in a way is understanding. The power to understand the roots of suffering. To look without prejudice, with unprejudiced eyes. To look so deeply that we can see and understand the roots of suffering, the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. If we really want to understand, we have to transcend the boundaries of a narrow self. This is the sword of understanding that cuts through the bonds of suffering to free ourselves and to free all beings. We invoke the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, who acts with the eyes and heart of compassion, bringing joy to one person in the morning and easing the pain of one person in the afternoon. Can you do that? I think you can. You can do it this week. You can smile to someone in the morning. You can listen deeply to someone in the afternoon. Maybe more than one. You can be Samantabhadra. You already are. This is the quality of joy on the path of service. It's not service as hard labor, but helping others, serving with joy, serving as joy. So when you scrub the toilets, or chop the vegetables, or fill the basins for the washing up, see if you can do it with joy. See if you can do it as Samantabhadra. It's beautiful, and it's much less tiring. We invoke the name of Kshitigarbha, quality of fearlessness. Kshitigarbha is present. It's always present wherever there is darkness, suffering, oppression, and despair. And brings light and hope and relief to those places. And that place may be you, may be in your own heart. You have to have the fearlessness to look into the darkness, into your own fear and hopelessness, with courage, fearlessness. You have it in you. Kshitigarbha vows to do their best not to contribute to making more hells on earth, and to transform the hells that already exist. And then we have the Bodhisattva Sadaparibhutta. Always respects and never disparages or underestimates others. This you can practice in this retreat. Whoever you look at, whoever you see, don't underestimate them. Look at them with love. Let go of your judgment, your reaction, your likes and your dislikes. We will look with the eyes of non-discrimination to appreciate the qualities, the goodness in others, saying to them, you are enough. You are someone of great value. Wouldn't it be amazing if we all looked at each other like that? If we could look at ourselves like that? We vow to see that other people's joy and success is our own joy and success. This is very difficult. We see somebody else's success, we tend to get jealous. And we want it for ourselves. Sometimes it happens in the Dharma sharing. You see somebody have a breakthrough and you're like, I want a breakthrough. But their breakthrough is your breakthrough. They are you. Experience it as though it's happening to you. Let go of the idea that it's only about you. It's not about you. That can be your mantra. It's my mantra. It's not about me. It's not. So when somebody shares an insight, it's yours already. So because there's a lot there in these bodhisattvas, all these different qualities, and because we know that sometimes life is a little bit hard, and we know that sometimes you have to also show up in difficult circumstances, difficult places where maybe not everybody is practicing deep listening, and you need a little bit of a boost of courage. We wanted to create a kind of anthem for you. And maybe we need many, many, many anthems to support us, to give us the spiritual strength and courage that we need. But we've got one, and I want to ask the sound team, if they're still there, to play this track for you, in case you haven't heard it. It's called Invocation, and it's just the invocation of the qualities of the bodhisattvas. And maybe it's something that you can have in your pocket for when things get tough, and we hope that it can support you. It's got to be louder than that, much louder.
We invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering of the world. We will listen with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will listen without prejudice. We will listen without judging or reacting. We will listen in order to understand. We will listen so attentively that we can hear what the other person is saying and also what is being left unsaid. Just by listening deeply, we already alleviate so much pain and suffering in the world.
We invoke your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way of being still and looking deeply into the hearts of things and into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or reacting. We will look so deeply that we can see and understand the roots of suffering, the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will learn your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffering and free ourselves and all beings.
We invoke your name, Samantabhadra. We aspire to learn your way of acting with the eyes and heart of compassion, bringing joy to one person in the morning and easing the pain of one person in the afternoon. Knowing that the happiness of others is our own happiness, we aspire to touch joy on the path of service. With every look, every word, every action, we can bring happiness to others and ourselves become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our loved ones and for all beings.
We invoke your name, Kshitigarbha. We aspire to learn your way of being present, where there is darkness, suffering, and despair, so we can bring light, hope, and relief to those places. We will not abandon those in desperate situations, and will reach out to those whose cries for help, justice, and human rights are not being heard. We will do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth, and to help transform the hells that already exist. We vow to cultivate the qualities of perseverance and stability, so that we can always be there for those in need.
We invoke your name, Sadaparibhuta. We aspire to learn your way of always respecting and never demeaning or underestimating others. We will look with the eyes of non-discrimination to appreciate the qualities and goodness in others, saying to them, "You are enough. You are someone of great value." We vow to see that other people's joy and success is also our own joy and success. Actively watering the good seeds in ourselves and others, we can encourage confidence and self-acceptance and see that we are all wonders of the universe.